time once again to slip into your camo, grab your bow, and join us out in the field for another episode of the Up North Journal, presented by PSE Archery. The Up North Journal crew is knocked and ready to rock for another exciting adventure. So let's step outside and hit the trail.
This episode of the Up North Journal podcast is brought to you by PSE Archery,
Spot Shooters Archery,
EZ Kut,
Packer Max,
Hunter's Blend Coffee,
Scent-Lok,
Scent Blocker,
Limb Walker Game Calls,
Buck Baits,
Gut Check,
Stanislawski Release Aids,
Copper John,
Fourth Arrow Camera Arms,
Wind Sense Vapor Hunting Products,
and Rebel 6 Rubs. And don't forget you can catch us in syndication at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on goodtalkradio.com. Hey, welcome back, everybody. Another episode of the Up North Journal podcast, everybody. I'm host Mike Adams, sitting in the cabin tonight, all alone. Danny's not here. If you watched our live drop here just a few minutes ago, you'll realize that he is in the UP. But I do have him dialed in here via Skype. Danny, what's going on?
I'm just enjoying the 19-degree weather we have up in the UP. That's what I'm doing.
Good. You enjoy that. You enjoy that while I talk here real quick. Let's get a little bit out of the way here. Hunter's Blend Coffee, huntersblend.com. If you go over and use the UNJ promo code, you'll save 10% on your order. Matter of fact, let me throw that little promo code up here so y'all can see what I'm talking about here. And it is right there. And actually, Dan's name's on the banner, but Danny ain't here. So, anyway, you get the gist of it. Use the UNJ promo code, save 10%. And while we're at it, we also want to mention Buck Baits, buckbaits.com. We've been using their product in the field, and I'm probably going to talk about it a little bit tonight. But if you go over and use the promo code Up North Journal, you'll save 20%. You better get your order in because here in Michigan, firearm deer season starts this coming weekend. And while we're at it, let's talk about Rebel 6. Danny, you love Rebel 6, I know. And if you use their UNJ promo code North Journal, you'll save 20% off of their products. And our last one, this will be the last time we talk about this, because actually by the time we get back around to this coming weekend, you better hurry up because JPO Game Calls, you can save 10% on an order from them only until November 15th, which is the opening day of firearm deer season. So with that being said, make sure you get over and get your orders in. So, but there's Danny, frozen in Crystal Falls. Matter of fact, the picture's frozen. So Danny, what's going on? 19 degrees. What the heck?
Yeah, it's November in Michigan. What do you expect, right?
Right. I guess so, man. And I
tell you what, it was the typical driving through Michigan, and I think we saw all four seasons.
Really? That bad?
Yep. It was sunshine. It was cloudy. Then it was raining. Mm-hmm. Then it was snowing, and then it was sunny.
Nice. Typical Michigan this time of year. So the drive up was uneventful this time, I hope, other than the four seasons that you drove through?
The drive up was very uneventful, except for the typical getting in between Gaylord and the Manistee. That's always a lottery pick as to which weather we're going to get. And sure enough, when we hit the bridge up in Mackinac, it was 33 degrees, and it was doing the old raining, sleeting, snowing combo.
Okay, that sounds like fun. Jeez, oh Pete's. But you made it up
safely.
Yeah,
we did, and the sign on the bridge said the deck was icy, so that was fun.
Right. So being a little icy, I take it you slowed down just a touch?
Just a touch. It was just we just made sure everything was good. But other than that, it was uneventful till we got over. We got into town, and then it wasn't too bad. I think it was about in the 30s, so it wasn't too bad.
Okay, well, let me ask you this, just because Ron Moses is chatting here real quick. He says we'll be ice fishing by Thanksgiving. You got ice on the water up there yet?
Okay, so actually we talked about this last night in talking with a local here. They do have ice on some of the lakes. It's not safe, but it's starting to creep in. And so if this weather keeps up like it is, I'm sure up here, definitely be ice by Thanksgiving.
All right. Well, you got to like that if you're an ice fisherman. But so you made it up safely. It's cold. You got to camp. You sent me some pictures here. I'm going to kind of go through while you're talking. The first one, you're showing me a picture of downtown. Is this the infamous Crystal Falls that you're showing us here?
That is the infamous Crystal Falls downtown when you're at the bottom of the hill and you're looking up towards the courthouse, which is at the top of the hill.
Okay.
It's one of those things. It's one of those things that it's gorgeous, but man, I tell you what, in the wintertime, it has got to be interesting.
You think? I would think so.
Right, exactly. And I've seen it. I've been up here when the snow on the road, they put it in the middle of the road till they get to it. So
Okay.
It's like, it's a pretty steep hill, but it's a beautiful view from up top.
Yeah. Now, speaking of snow on the roads here, it looks like a dirt road, and you've got snow on the roads.
So that was our flurries today. That was during the night we had some flurries. They didn't say anything about accumulation, and really we don't have any. We got a snow cover in the woods, just a dusting, but nothing to say, hey, we got to shovel it. So it'd be a good tracking snow. Hopefully we can change that and get it into a tracking snow and be good.
Okay. All right. Well, and then it looks like you guys made it to the cabin. I see. Is that pumpkins out there on the front porch or by the front porch? I see something orange hanging out there.
That is pumpkins. That's our weekend bait up here. So we're gonna let the deer have some pumpkins and do some carving.
Okay, right on. So now I see that is not the usual red pickup truck that I see. We talked about that the last time you went up. So you had somebody else drive, or is this your new ride?
No. That's my cousin's new ride, and we brought his truck up, and it made it up here very nicely. And you won't be seeing the big red one anymore. That's been retired and sent off to greener pastures. And but no, he drove, and it was a smooth ride.
Okay, and side by side sitting out there, it looks like it's ready to rock and roll.
Oh yeah, we were rocking and rolling in that yesterday and today, and it was. I tell you what, that thing comes in handy when you're hauling stuff around the woods, or you're needing to cut in a new trail and work on a trail and get to places. Getting too old for the four-wheeler, so the side-by-side is working.
Okay, well, you're talking about cutting a trail. It looks like you got a chainsaw in hand here. It looks like you guys are clearing a trail.
Absolutely. It's one of the old trails that it used to be one of our main trails. Mm-hmm. Then we had the property logged, and then that trail kind of got messed up a little bit. Mm-hmm. And so we kind of went back at it today, and you can see there my cousin, he's got the chainsaw in hand, and he was cutting away, and we were throwing brush off the trail and reopening the trail so we can use it again.
Okay, so this was to open the trail. It wasn't to cut firewood.
No. Nope. We were cutting through the logging downfalls that they had, and we had to reopen to get. It's a trail that gets us to the back of the property.
Okay. Yeah, there's a wider picture here that I'm showing now. It looks like the same spot because I can see the tree down across the trail. But you can see the stumps in the foreground there. I take it that's where they logged up to where those trees are at right there. That's the end of the cut.
Yeah, they select cut in this area, so you'll see some gone and some that are still there. It was one of the areas that he had left as I guess we'll call it a sanctuary zone. And what it's done for the property is it's actually created a nice funnel.
Okay.
So we're trying to wrap ourselves around how this property is changing with this logging. We're in, I think this January, I think it'll be 3 years now.
3 years. Okay. All right. Gotcha.
Yep. Since we started the logging project, and we're following the plan. And what's happening is some of the property is changing and some of the property is not changing. We found that out tonight, matter of fact, where my cousin had been sitting for years. He was sitting back there again, but now the deer patterns have changed.
Okay.
And so we're like, oh, okay, so now that's something different. So we're going to start to pay attention to where they're coming in off the field instead of through the woods. It's now open. It's clear cut. That they're actually, he had mentioned that they'd never really come from that direction, but now they're starting to mostly come from that direction.
Gotcha. Okay. So you think this is just a dynamic of hunting pressure pushing things around? Do you think it's because of the cut, because of the food plots? What do you think? Or all of the above? Is it causing these deer to change their patterns?
I think it's all the above. I wouldn't say hunting pressure, because really we're in a lot of private land, and there really isn't many hunters. And truthfully, it's still For bow hunting up here, I don't think there's a lot of hunters per se. We did plant a lot. I know I had my fields planted. My cousin planted as well all the trails that he could plant. So I'm thinking between the new growth of the clear cut, the plantings, I think that's changing it a little bit, that they're heading towards those open fields and getting that fresh new growth.
Okay, gotcha. All right. So, well, tell me what else is going on up there. I mean, we see the snow. We see you've been working. Have you got any chance to do any hunting yet? Because it's still bow season here in Michigan.
Absolutely. So we finally got all our camp work done that we wanted to get done. And while he was cutting that trail, I went and I put up some cameras. I went and baited some stands, got making sure things were okay. First thing we did was we got up here yesterday. We pulled the cards, the camera cards, and upon further review, there really isn't anything that's jumping at us as something that's new to see. We did have a bear on camera 3 days ago.
Okay.
So I don't know. I'm hoping this cold kind of makes him go to sleep, because I really don't want to run into him anytime soon while I'm out there, because that camera is one of the stands that we're going to be on. So, but then from that point on, this afternoon we're like, okay. Matter of fact, the temperature started dropping as we were working today, and it's like, okay, so let's get out in the woods. So we got out last couple hours, and I tell you what, it wasn't too long before you saw the deer. The deer were moving kind of all day today. We were kind of seeing them all over the property, and first thing in, some does came in, and they were feeding and coming through, and then about hour before dark, maybe 45 minutes before dark, nice 6-point came in.
Okay.
I'm trying to adhere to a 8 or better up on the property, so this 6-point, very nice. Probably 2.5 for sure, and then moments later, a 5-point came in, and Mr. 6-point didn't like Mr. 5-point. Okay. So they kind of had a little run around the woods a little bit. But then these does were kind of meandering around as well, and then all of a sudden the 5-point took off after a doe, and they went running through the woods and crashing. So it must be getting pretty close for some of these does up here. I think the more mature ones probably are getting close. So every once in a while you'd see this 5-point just start taking off after this certain doe. So she must be getting close. The 6-point really didn't care. That was kind of funny. He's like, nah, okay. But then when the 5-point got close to him, he's like, okay, get away. I don't need you.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that the younger ones are doing a little of the chasing from what you're saying versus the ones who are a little older. And, we kind of saw that down in Indiana this week as well. Same thing, the younger bucks seem to be the ones that were interested. The button bucks, the spikes, the 4 points, 6 points were bumping and pushing does. And I had some buck baits out and spreading that around. And that's the matured bucks. Well, I only saw one, but from what the other guys were saying and seeing as well, the mature bucks, they're just kind of waiting. I think they wait for that visual presentation maybe, of does presenting and actually seeing the doe along with the smell maybe. I don't know. What's your thoughts?
Exactly. With the doe numbers up here the way they are, and I want to say they're slanted in our area, that the big bucks really don't have to move yet, because the does are just meandering as it is. So odds are that the mature buck is not going to have to move as far to find a doe to breed.
Right.
Now, with that said, he's still going to have that wanting to go breed mentality. So we did see a nice 6-point driving in, which is middle of the day. So depending on how this weather's going to be cold, my thought is that they're going to be up and moving midday again.
Okay.
And I'm thinking that these mature bucks, as these mature does start to come into heat, I think it's going to start really getting down and dirty, especially in the next couple of days here. It's going to get cold, so they're going to have to keep moving and be on their feet. They're not going to be able to sit tight and hold out the weather. So a combination of the both, I hope, gets the more mature bucks up and moving, getting some travelers coming through the property. We got the food plots out there. Matter of fact, there was 6 in the food plot yesterday evening, right at close to dark when I was pulling one of the cameras. So
Okay.
they're in the area. The does are in the area, so I'm hoping the mature bucks start to come and start to visit.
Yeah, well, Ron Moses just commented here as well. He said yesterday on his way back from Texas, he was driving home and he saw a few bucks chasing does along the roads around 1 a.m. to daylight. So it sounds to me like he's seeing them, they're nocturnal still. So, and that's kind of, what we were thinking was happening where we were at as well. And he also mentions that the platform there behind you and behind the gator, or not the gator, but the side-by-side, he said he likes the platform, nice platform. You got that blind on.
I tell you what, that thing is I'm not going to lie. Version number 2 is awesome. Okay. We made some improvements, and I like it. And the deer really don't mind it. The deer came in tonight. Mm-hmm. I've had it up since Labor Day, and they really don't mind it at all. I mean, they watched me get out of it today and climb down the ladder, and the 6-point didn't move. He just watched me walk away. So
gotcha.
It's funny when they do this. We tell people about what happens up here, and like last night we were walking in the field to pull that one camera, and the 2 of the does started coming right at us. So it's like, okay,
right. Well, I'll tell you what.
Do you think?
Go ahead.
You want to throw it to a break? Then I got a question for you.
Okay, yeah. Let's go ahead. We'll toss it to a break here, our first break. When we come back, Danny's got a question. We'll continue the conversation. So we're going to step outside, and we will be right back after this.
PSE Archery has reinvented the way you buy bows.
From now on, you can make the most educated decision possible
by basing your bow choice specifically on your shooting needs and goals.
All you need to do is ask yourself, what kind of shooter am I? What do I want to achieve?
PSE will help find the right category for you.
So, what kind of shooter are you?
Find out at psearchery.com.
Welcome back, second segment of the show. I got Danny in the UP. Are you sitting on by the railroad tracks like you used to, or do you have phone service at the cabin now?
No, actually, I'm in downtown Crystal Falls. I'm at the Crystal Fresh Market parking lot.
Okay, so you're
watching traffic go by.
You're up in town. Okay.
Yeah, I ran into town. That way, it seems when I am by the railroad tracks in the dark, I'll have a lot of people stop and make sure I'm okay, which is a great thing. So
right.
I figure, I'll just go into town, park in a parking lot, make it look like I'm
shopping,
supposed to be here. Yeah. Right. So that's where I'm at. I'm in.
You're in Crystal Falls. So I got the picture back up of downtown. Where you're sitting? Is it in this photo?
No. I'm on that would be, if that was a side of town, that would be the east side of town.
Okay.
I'm on the west side of town.
Okay.
On the flat side, actually.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Just wondering. So before we went to break, you said you had a question for me.
Yeah. We were just talking about Ron Moses.
Yeah.
Seeing deer chasing at night.
Yeah.
In Indiana, do you see a lot of deer? Were you seeing a lot of deer out in the fields during the day, mid-afternoon, or anything like that? Or were you kind of, because we haven't talked since you were in Indiana and I came up north, and I was kind of like thinking, so is there like a morning hunt, or is there a midday hunt, an evening hunt?
It depends on where out on the property, and that's one of the things I learned. I went into that whole situation blind. We had trail cameras, but, the cameras got pulled about 3-4 weeks ago because we had a trespasser on the property. So all the cameras got pulled looking for evidence, trying to figure out who it was for the CO. But cameras did not get...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, cameras didn't get put back out again until, it was the middle of this week, or last part of the week. I think it was Thursday. So we didn't have any information as to really what time the deer were moving. And we had just what we had from previous photos, up to that point. But what I learned was, depending on where you're at on the property, it was depending on where the action was. And, if it was morning or evening. So I bounced.
Oh, so they had like around. So they had like so you kind of found out you had a morning area, and then you had an evening area.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and the other problem is there's a huge, and I mean huge, sanctuary. It's well over 100 acres, and it's all wooded, and it's off to the side that we don't have access to. We can't go in there. That's why we call it sanctuary. Nobody's allowed to hunt it. So the deer can feed in the field, go in the sanctuary, and it's like, oh, well, hey, you're screwed. But they do come out of that,
right.
And they filter in the woods on the north end and work their way from the north end along the creek up into the CRP fields where I was hunting. And then eventually, that's a bedding area as well. And then in the evening, they're working their way through the back end of the swamp, which is on the north end of the property. At least that's kind of what I found out, spending the week there.
Oh, okay. So they kind of had their own little travel clock, depending on what time of day is where they would be on the property.
Yeah, the only problem was I didn't figure it out until later in the week. But then it was a little too late. But
lessons learned, right?
Yeah, it was really interesting trying to learn that property in a short time. And, the one thing I ever asked that I really wanted out of this week was to have an encounter with a big buck. Just an encounter and an opportunity. And, we'll talk about that later in the show. But because Ron Moses, he says, I want to hear the Indiana story, LOL. So he's probably waiting on some of the things that I was posting so he can hear what happened.
Exactly. So
shout out to a couple guys and gals that are watching. Your daughter Kelly's watching. Along with Ron is Craig Hawley, and AJ Rico is also watching. And the guys and gals from Buck Bait says good luck. So
nice. That's awesome. That's another thing. As you were talking about, like timing, right? So this evening out, like I said, the 6-point and the 5-point came in, and I'm hoping sometimes it seems we have like a golden hour in the morning. It'll be about between the 8 and 10.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be either quiet and then all of a sudden stuff happens, or it'll be busy and stuff really starts happening. But it seems like we have that on the property. We've always noticed it gives them a little, like an hour after or a little bit, and then all of a sudden things start to happen. And here, like you said, Buck Baits, I got a couple things. Got a couple prototypes in my hands that I'm testing out for him.
Okay.
For them at Buck Baits. So I got them. I'm working on them. I'm giving them feedback, but we'll see how that works out and where we go with the prototypes, and then we'll give him the feedback that he wants to hear.
There you go. Well, I was using their product quite a bit down there, and had some interesting reactions. So, we'll talk about that a little more after we get done talking to you about your hunt. And Ron Moses, he said what he noticed was as he was going through Indiana, they seemed to be moving across the big fields at night and then next to the wood patches and using the ditches a lot. And that's kind of, they really weren't moving across. The fields where we were so huge. I mean, 400 acres of that 600 is fields. So they would jump across the field from the sanctuary to the wood line and then start working their way up through the wood line. That's kind of the way we experienced it at our place. So in the ditches, that's kind of what I was hunting was dry creek banks or creek beds. I was down in the where it was wet in the spring, but it had dried up, and between two CRP fields, working a pinch point through there and off of where it dropped down into lowlands off of the fields. But
okay.
So
because up here we're dealing with it's all big woods. There's no fields, farm fields or anything per se. So we're dealing with the swamp. We're dealing with the hardwoods. We're dealing with the logging. So they tend to jump out kind of anywhere,
right?
And or walk in anywhere. So there isn't a pattern per se that they're always coming from one direction. They're kind of like all over.
Well, and you're hunting in big timber. I mean, it's just big tracts of timber. Like you said, there's no ag fields there. So the food they're getting is, natural forage or the food plots that people do put out or bait. Yep, exactly. And so, it'll be no problem. For what little bait we are up here and put out, they eat it. And if it helps them get through the winter, I'm glad to do it. Because they don't have that big ag fields to sit and have breakfast, lunch, and dinner on. Right. Well, I got a picture here that I found really interesting. I didn't know you had tall deer up there, or elk, small elk. What's the story of this rub, man? This thing looks like it's about 5 feet long. Okay, so that I was pulling a camera, the camera with the bear on it, and that is right on the edge of the swamp, and is
bright orange, red. That just happened within the last day or two. That's for sure.
Sticks out like a sore thumb. You see it for a mile, I bet.
My cousin picked it up right away. He goes, "Hey, look!" And we walked over there. It's right on the edge of the swamp. I don't think you can see it, but where the main part of the rub is, I think if you're facing the picture to the left, is where you can see the tines from the other side digging in.
Gotcha. Yeah, I see. I kind of see what you're talking about. Yeah.
So I think I know what buck that is. If it was that 6-point I saw tonight, it would fit. But I'm hoping it's his grandpa or something that I'm going to see here soon.
Yeah, that's a lot of wear and tear for a young fella, I would think. Typically.
He went after that tree, and that tree didn't have a chance.
That or he was just ticked off. So how far is that from your platform blind?
That is, I would say, 40 yards.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm showing a picture out your front window here of your blind.
It's right on the edge of the swamp. The picture you got today, I'm up in the hardwoods. I'm up on the hardwoods. You can see the front window I'm looking towards, which is, there's a ridge there that they will tend to run. The wolves also run that ridge.
Okay.
And then there's another picture that has like
pines,
a tunnel effect.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I'm on the edge of the pines, and they're coming from all directions. They'll typically walk right through the pines, through the thick stuff, and they'll pop out. And so I'm hoping to catch. And the 6-point, if you're looking at the picture from out the front window, came from my right as along the 5-point did. They came right through the hardwoods, and they were just cruising away. They were just moving, and they came right in, and doing their thing.
Well, that's got to be, you've got what, the rest, you went up when, last Thursday or this weekend?
We got up here, what's today? Oh, we got up here yesterday.
Oh, yesterday, okay. So, and you're going to be up there until this coming Saturday?
Yep, we'll be up here till Sunday. So okay. I'll get my bow hunting / crossbow in from now until probably Thursday, unless I tag out, and then I'll get 2 days of gun season, and then I will be heading home.
Okay, pretty much like me. I'm going up Thursday, but I won't. I've took Thursday off to get up to camp and get settled in. But I'm not gonna bow hunt. And there's only 2 of us in camp this year. Other guys are hunting in different spots with different people, and just me and one other guy. And we've got a plan put together. And I thought, okay, so if I go in and I hunt Thursday evening, the 14th, and I bow hunt. Let's say I knock something down. Okay, well then I've got to track it. That's going to create, a lot of noise, a lot of scent in the area, a lot of commotion, and then I got to get it out, field dress it and get it out. And to me, it wasn't worth blowing the hunt, for one evening hunt. You know what I'm saying? Does that make any sense?
Absolutely. No, I totally get it. I do not. When I'm up here like I am now, I do not hunt the evening of the 14th.
Okay.
I might hunt the morning, but then I'll pull out in the morning, and I'm done for the rest of the day, and I'll kind of let the woods settle down. I'll let the other people, the other private landers around us, get the commotion going. Maybe if they're running out to their blinds or they're doing whatever out in the woods to kind of push the deer to where maybe it's not as loud.
Right. Gotcha.
And the same thing as you talked about too. In case you do get one, especially your area, my area, you put a gut pile out. That's basically a dinner bell for all the wolves and coyotes that are around. And it's like, yeah, no, we don't want that. So
right.
We try to eliminate that as much as possible, and we don't try to leave our gut piles out in the woods. We try to get them out of here and don't let the wolves and coyotes hang in the area.
Yeah, I don't blame you. We've talked about that before, and the same mindset at our camp as well. Down there, the coyote, obviously there's no wolves down there where we were hunting in Indiana, but coyotes, they're there. I actually saw one Saturday morning, the last hunt I was out, and actually the last half hour of the hunt, I almost got a crack at them, but they're nowhere near as bad as what they are up here or up where we're hunting. So, it's not as major of a concern as getting that out, gut piles out. So But yeah, I understand what you're saying. Let everything calm down your property. Let everybody else do the pushing and push it your way. That way, they're there for the next morning for the opener. I don't blame you.
Exactly, and then by then you're ready. You sneak into your blind, get set, and hopefully ambush one that's up and at 'em.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what, we're up against it here, so why don't we go ahead and we'll take our next break. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation about this week leading up to firearm deer season here in Michigan and what's been going on with you and me here the last week. So we're going to step outside.
Sounds good.
We'll be right back after this.
PSE Archery has always dominated the speed category. Now, the most revolutionary cam system ever to hit the market has perfected the shooting experience. Introducing PSE's Evolve Cam System, featuring extremely high let-off capabilities and the smoothest draw cycle in history. No other cam system has ever delivered this level of total comfort and total control. Experience PSE. Experience performance.
Welcome back. Third segment of the show, everybody. Sitting here in the cabin talking to Danny DeFall, who's up in Crystal Falls, getting ready for firearm deer season and doing a little bow hunting on his property. So you got cold weather, you got some deer there, you're all set. It sounds like everybody's got everything set up and ready to roll. It's your place.
Yep, we're ready. It's supposed to get bitterly cold by I think Tuesday, and then it's going to start to break on Wednesday into Thursday. I think it's going to start to actually get into the 30s.
Same downstate here, It's kind of a shock to the system when you go from the 40s and 50s to the teens in like one day. And that's what I experienced down there too. Same thing, And I was in mid-Indiana. It wasn't like I was, on the Michigan-Indiana border. It got cold, and it got cold quick. So I can just imagine where you were at.
Was it a different kind of cold down there? Was it dry?
The first night it was. I mean, I got up. See, that would have been Friday morning. I think that was Friday. Yeah, Friday morning. I had all my heavy stuff with me because you just never know. It wasn't in the forecast, the extended forecast that I looked at, and I didn't look very far ahead while I was there. But I'm glad I took my heavy stuff with me because I needed it come Friday morning. I bundled up and got on the stand, and really the only thing you could see was my eyeballs. I had my parka zipped up all the way past my nose to the bottom of my eyes, and I had my Scent-Lok sock hat on, pulled down to my eyelids on top with my parka top or cap on it as well. And I was just huddled up in this little ball, like a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. My suit kind of puffs up and it has the microfiber fill to keep you warm. And I did okay except for my feet. The boots I got, very, very disappointed in them. And I don't know who makes them for Cabela's, but I've had them for a couple of years. And I've had issues before, but I had 2 pair of socks on and my toes froze. I spent 4 hours in 19-degree weather. Well, it got in the low 20s, like 22 by the time I got out of the woods.
Wow, balmy, right?
Right.
So, when you went down there, you had a game plan. And like up here, the weather can be from shorts to, like you said, you look like the Marshmallow Man. I totally agreed. Going down there, when you started the week off, the plan that you had, was it like get in there, you obviously had a doe tag, or were you going to hold off? What were you thinking driving down there? You had a few hours to think about the situation you were heading into, first time going into this property to hunt.
My mindset, I got down there on Saturday afternoon, and actually I was late getting into town. I just drove right to the woods and met my buddy Dan Carr down there. I got a picture up here. Danny, you can't see, but we're on our electric bikes getting ready to head to the woods, and I got in a traffic jam in Toledo on the bypass, set an hour to go 4 miles. But so hustling down, I was pretty ticked off, but I got out there. My whole mindset was I had 2 doe tags and a buck tag. It's called a deer bundle, and that's the way they sell their tags. If you buy them that way, you get an extra doe tag pretty much for the same price. It was going to be, if it was a target-rich environment, I was going to sling arrows, and I did. I mean, I slung arrows. It should have turned out a lot better. If everything would have worked out the way it should have, I'd have tagged out in 2 days. But I was very, very humbled by the second morning I was there. Just put it that way.
So you were going in with the like you said, sling and arrow. So if it was a doe or a buck that you were willing to shoot, it was game on for anything.
Absolutely, yeah. It was the landowners want the doe, or they want the population dropped on the property. They definitely want it dropped, and the way to do that is to take out does. And we were told if it's a doe, shoot it. It didn't matter if it was a 1.5-year old doe or if it was an old doe. We had button bucks all over the place. And that was another challenge of really paying attention to understanding what you were shooting at and getting a good hard look at them, because this would have been Friday night. I watched 3 deer in a field on the north end in the evening, and that's when I made the decision to make a hard, long move to the opposite end of the property and hunt, because the evenings to me weren't panning out where I was at. In the middle of the property, I needed to move, and I got on the back end of a swamp. I found scrapes, I found rubs, and found out where they were feeding off this other field that another guy owned, but they were crossing over onto our property. And I watched these 3 deer feed, and I was like, man, that's a big doe. And I'm like, time's running short. I can take another doe if I want, but I really think I don't need to screw a hunt up back here tonight, because this is where the big boys are. It's what appeared. So they got close. They got within 20 yards of my stand, and all of a sudden I realized they weren't big doe, mature does. They were button bucks. And I went, oh my gosh. I was like, OMG. I could not believe how big these button bucks were. The deer down there are bigger. There's no doubt about it. But I was shocked at how big these were. It blew my mind. So, but no, that was the whole mindset going in. Really was to shoot as many, all of us to shoot does, and then given the opportunity to shoot a big buck, that's what we wanted to do.
It sounded like you had the plan ready.
Yeah, well, the plan was in place. I'm rolling through some pictures here, Dan. Obviously, you can't see them, but of my hunting setup. I was hunting between 2 CRP fields. This is a good pinch point. A lot of deer activity we saw on trail camera. We saw a big buck moving through this area. What we called the Big 8. And the first day I got down there, I flat out just whiffed on. No, I not take that back. It wasn't the first day. It wasn't Saturday. It was Sunday. Sunday morning, I whiffed on a doe. Just flat out butchered the shot. And that's just because of my shooting form was not... I got antsy in the stand, and I had 4 does underneath me. The one I wanted to shoot, I couldn't get a shot at, and I finally took a shot at the second largest one. And I was more or less drawing as I was aiming a rifle straight out in front of me instead of across my body. And it took me a second to realize why my draw length was way too long, and I couldn't get into my peep sight. Yeah. And I finally started wiggling around trying to maneuver to get to where I get a shot, and my form was all off, and I just flat out missed. No excuse on it, and that's just what happened. So, but later that morning, I got a shot at a beautiful, what we call the Big 8. And actually, I'm gonna throw a picture up. We've got trail cam photos of this buck.
Oh, you got trail cam of them.
Yeah, and for those of you watching on the live stream, this is the buck I shot over, and this was at about 9 in the morning. Let me go back to the picture for those of you sitting here. Hang on one second here. Sorry, Dan.
No problem.
So there's a CRP field to the right of this picture, and I looked out in that field, and it was about 9 in the morning, and the sun was shining, and there was a little bit of frost still at that point in the morning, and all of a sudden, all I saw were antlers glistening in the field. The grass is just about tall enough to see a deer's head. And I saw the head turn one way and then turn the other, and I'm like, that's a wide boy, and it's tall. I said, that's a shooter. But he turned and went into the wood line behind me, and I'm like, well, I gotta do something. So I grabbed my grunt tube out and made 2 soft grunts at him, put the tube down, and waited. And all of a sudden, up the creek bed, here he come. I could see him coming from probably 100 yards away. And as he worked his way up, I'm trying to frantically find my rangefinder, because he's coming in a way that I knew I hadn't ranged anything behind me, because it's just so thick. I'm like,
hadn't ranged.
Yeah, there's no way that I could see anything back there to shoot through. But if he cleared it and came across to my right side, the right side of my tree as I was facing it, I'm like, I'm going to get a shot. Could not find my rangefinder. It was down in my bag instead of hanging around my neck. Long story short, I looked at a tree, and I said, if he gets to that tree, that's a 40-yard shot. Because I looked at my 40-yard tree at about a 90-degree angle to my right, and I'm like, you draw that imaginary line, that arc, and I'm like, yeah, that looks the same. That's pretty close. So he comes through, there's a deadfall, and he passes in front of it, and he gets right in front of that tree I thought was 40, and there's some tall weeds there, but I can see his body perfectly. He steps out, and I'm like, okay, he's about 36 yards, it looks like. I said, I'm going to go with a pin gap, 30, 40, and hold it just a touch high. And when I fired, shot, went right over his back. I mean, just as plain
how far did you miss him over his back?
Oh, an inch or two. I mean, it didn't hit him. There's no way it hit him. I know it didn't hit him, but it wasn't like it was sky high. So
right,
he jumps and stands there and looks, and I'm like, okay, he didn't hit him. He doesn't know what it was, and being a mature buck, he just kind of like, okay, forget this, I'm out of here. And he turned around and he walked off. He walked off back the same way he came in. So, I made a mental note of that, where he was headed. But I finally dug the rangefinder out of my pack and ranged it. It was 22 yards. I'm like, there's no way that's 22 yards. There's no way in the world. And I ranged that spot for the next 3 or 4 times I was in that stand through the week. I kept rearranging it. I'm like, it is 22 yards. And I thought it was, 36. It looked like he was pretty close to that tree at 40. So what I thought was 40. The tree was actually less than, it was about 27 yards, I think. Yeah. So big mistake. Big mistake on my part. So that was the encounter. That's what I had hoped for, was getting an encounter with this guy. And like I say, I got a picture up right here. Here's another picture of him, trail cam photo. These were taken, I think, in August, still in velvet, but he was a hoss.
Geez.
He's a hoss, man.
Yeah, you've had your encounters this year, that's for sure. You had the Matrix up at your other camp, and now you met this guy down in Indiana.
Yeah. It really humbled me. Put it that way. It when you miss two nice bucks. Well, the Matrix buck up here in Michigan, I had so much time to sit and really think through my shot sequence on that and make sure everything was just spot on when I released that arrow. I knew when I released that arrow, he was a dead deer walking. But like I said, that's the buck that jumped. He jumped the arrow, and it went just underneath him.
Right.
But this one, I just flat out blew because I misjudged the distance. There was no excuse for it. I don't judge distance well. That's my biggest problem.
And that's the thing. That's the thing about hunting, right? It's not like you're standing at the 20-yard mark shooting at a piece of paper that's got some nice rings with an X in it. Where here you've got hills, brush, you've got variation to, and like you said, the way your form.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, and what we did is we sat and we talked through a lot of this. And actually, I shot a doe the next morning. I killed that doe, and I shot high on it. And then the next day, I had an opportunity, another doe, and shot. And we tracked it. We blew the area up. And later that afternoon, one of the guys I was hunting with actually saw it with a buck. And it was hitting no man's land, the proverbial no man's land between the vitals and the spine, where you can hit a deer there and they're going to live. And he said that it was in the same area. It had an entry hole and exit hole right where no man's land is. And he said, she's going to be sore, but she's going to live. And so we started, me and David Boggs sat down and we started really working through my shot sequence and really trying to understand what I was doing and where it was going wrong. And, when I explained what happened with the Matrix buck, and then I explained all the other ones, he's like, well, the one thing you didn't talk about is aligning your peep sight aperture to the aperture on your sight housing. He said, did you do that with the bucks or the deer down here? And I'm like, I don't remember it, and it is basically rushing the shot, worrying about pin placement because it's in your head and not taking the time to make sure you got proper form and executing. So. Yeah, Ron Moses says range stand out and put flagging on trees and mark yards. One less thing to figure out on a shot. I had all the trees marked around me, Ron, except for the one behind me. Because I never ever thought a deer could get through that thick stuff behind me. But lo and behold, he did. It's just, to me, there was no way to get through there. But you know what? That's where the big boys live. And and talking about working through shot sequence, I went to the range, and here I am. Here's some shots on the range from that day. I went back that afternoon and just shot. So, and everything was dead on, 20, 30, 40, 50 yards. It was no issues. So, but like you said, it's different when you're standing there versus shooting, at an animal that doesn't have a bullseye on him. And it wasn't buck fever either, because I tell you what, when this big bruiser walked in, he when I seen him coming at 100 yards away, I'm like, okay, game on, let's go, let's dance, buddy. It wasn't cockiness, but it was like, okay, this is going to happen. And I was stone cold and settled. I just misjudged the shot, and actually on him, I actually had time. And I canted the bow, made sure it was canted correctly with the level. I was absolutely level. I made sure I got the sight housing correct. I mean, I had time to do all of that. And it was the distance. I just shot over top of him. Misjudged the shot.
And it's funny you said that. You didn't think the buck would or the buck would come through that. And one of the things that I do is I try to think of, I notice where the deer are all coming from, and I try to figure out what's the one spot that I don't think they're going to come through. And it's like, okay, what if they do? Because I guarantee you 9 times out of 10, that's the one you're going to want is coming through. Hey, I haven't had a deer come through this way all week. And all of a sudden, the one that does is going to be the one you're going to want to shoot. Right.
Yeah, I hear you, man. It's like I said, it was very humbling. I learned a lot, on this trip. But like I said, it's, people look at you, they look at you and me, and they go, oh, you guys, you do a show, you guys, you work in the industry, these people, you guys, you shoot all the time, you guys must stack a lot of deer. It ain't about stacking a lot of deer. It ain't, and we make mistakes. And I guess, that's the one thing I was talking with Ken Cicluna via Messenger, and he got beat up pretty bad this week when he made, was asking for help on a shot on a big buck that he had, and he couldn't get it. He couldn't find it. And people are beating him up over it. But I told him, I said, you know what? I said, let that stuff go. I said, because you know what? We all screw up. And I screwed up. I've screwed up a lot this year. And I'm going to spend more time this coming year practicing. I can tell you that right now. I'm going to figure out a way that I can shoot from a platform, if I got to build one, and make sure that I get it right. And start practicing judging distances more. I used to do that a lot, but I haven't done it in a long time. And obviously, it really hurt me this year. But don't be afraid to talk about the mistakes you make in the field, guys. I mean, that's how we all learn.
Well,
and, nobody's perfect. So,
well, by talking about it, we never knew or didn't even consider what you call the matrix buck, that the broadhead was making a noise. So it's like, oh wait, so next year we already started talking about, hey, let's get some broadheads and see what's going on. Maybe there's something to that. Right. We never heard that before. And and Ken getting beat up by these people, I bet you if you go look in the mirror, they're not the 100% every time I shoot I get one. Right. No. It wouldn't be hunting if you didn't have those stories.
Well, and that's what makes stories. I mean, honestly, what do you sit and talk around the campfire? Yeah, man, I just can't believe I missed that buck, or I can't believe I screwed that hunt up. I'm sitting there and my chair squeaked, or I mean, whatever it is. Those are the things you look back on. Wouldas, couldas, and shouldas, and that just makes the ones that you do get just that much more enjoyable. And actually, I tell you what, let's take a break because I want to come back because this doe that I got, there is a little bit of a story to that as well, and I want to talk about that before we wrap up tonight. So. Let's step outside, take our last break. We come back, and we'll kind of wrap up what happened down in Indiana. We'll be right back after this.
Acceleration is part of PSE's DNA. PSE pioneered the speed movement. Now they've developed the vapor category to help you find the most powerful bows on the market to fit you.
High speed equates to intense power and building the momentum you need to be successful. Are you a vapor shooter? Find out at psearchery.com.
Welcome back. Last segment of the show, and I'm out of Hunter's Blend coffee. I need some more coffee. Ron Moses just said, mistakes make the best stories sometimes. And he says, I got plenty. Don't we all? See, that's hunting. If we didn't, it'd be called killing instead of hunting. So, I'll remember this trip for the rest of my life. You know, as long as the good Lord allows me to keep my memory, it'll stick with me. But yeah, I actually I made the leaves change colors on was that Sunday? I'm trying to remember. Well, before we get to that point, before we get to that, you know, after I missed that the buck and the doe all in the same morning, I was feeling down. I went to the range, and after that, the guys down at Katawi Range, they were pulling their 3D targets. So here's a picture of all of us out. I went out and helped them pull 3D targets. I said, what better way to make yourself happy than see a trailer full of animals, even if they are made of foam?
Right.
So we went out on their range, and here we are pulling the targets off of the range. But my question is, Danny, if you had to pull an elk target, how would you pull an elk target? What would you use?
Pull an elk target, a 3D elk target?
Yeah. You've seen them out there.
Yeah, they're huge.
Yeah, well, we used a tractor. There's a front loader right
you
there.
Picked it up with a fork.
Yeah.
Okay.
He had a front loader, so that's what we loaded it with. But yeah, so. But we got out and did some more hunting, and this young kid with me, that's Derek Getson. He worked down at the shop down there. He's a Moss Oak Pro staffer. We got him on our gamekeeper staff. And the owner of the shop there next to him, that's Tony Gertz, there of Katawi Range. But we went out hunting, and on this particular evening, Derek was actually lucky enough to score on a big mature doe that he shot. That's a picture of him and his doe there. And while he was out there getting it out of the field, I started taking pictures. So here's him trying to drag it underneath a tree, a downfall tree. You know, I was having a little bit too much fun, I think, at this point. And we helped him, you know, figure out how to gut it properly. So this was his third deer, but he was asking for some help. So I cropped most of the picture off there. You can see a little bit of the guts, but there he is working on his deer. And we got it back to the range and got it hung up. So, but the next morning, you know, after missing two, I was like back in the stand. And if you see there's one of those tree arms there that Danny and I showed you from that pack I had. Holding up my backpack there. I tell you what, those things work great. And we'll talk about that more at some other point. But yeah, I shot a doe. She came in, and she was with three other deer. And I managed to get a shot on her. Shot her a little high, but we tracked for about, I seen where she ran. Didn't find blood, couldn't find the arrow. And I was like, oh, here we go again, you know. And I walked out to the 2-track between the two CRP fields, and that's where I found first blood. So, and once we found first blood, it was pretty much, you know, we knew where she'd went. We started following the blood, and actually I let her lay for probably, I don't know, an hour. Well, maybe not that long, about a half hour. And I started to track a little bit, and I heard a doe blow at me as I approached that 2-track, and I seen another doe get up and looked like she was trying to walk and disappeared behind a deadfall. So I just backed out. So like I said, we waited probably a full hour. And then Derek and I got on the trail, and I was like, okay, I think she's over here behind this deadfall. And as we approached up towards the deadfall, we heard something, you know, like a big crash in some bushes. And then it was just silent after that. And I said, I think that was her. I said, that sound came from right behind that deadfall. And we're right up against the creek. I said, I'm going to step up on the deadfall on the trunk, and I'm going to look over and see if I can see. And when I did, I saw like water, not splashing, but just kind of moving, like ripples in the water. And
right.
I pointed down. I said, I think she's in the water. So I got over next to it where I could look down this embankment. And if you look in this picture there, right next to the tree, you can see her laying in the edge of the water. And when I say embankment,
she went swimming.
Yeah, she went swimming. She fell down the embankment. It's about an 8-foot drop down into the creek. As a matter of fact, here's a picture of me. I'm already down on the edge of the water. You can see the opposite bank there. You can see how high that is. And it's that way on both sides. So I maybe got over next to her. There she is down there in the water. You can see her there. And I'm like, okay, now I got to get in the water to go get her. So I sent Derek back to my Jeep to get a rope. I had a lifeline, an extra lifeline. It was in my Jeep. I said, get that. He had a basket because he was on a Rambo as well that had a deer cart. So he went to get the cart and my rope. And then we pulled her up out of the creek and got her up on the embankment, and I was able to take a couple quick photos. But yeah, you can see the embankment there behind me. And I was wringing wet after it took both of us to pull her up that thing. He had to tie it off and hold on so I could get up, and then we both pulled the deer out. So I was afraid he was going to let go and drop me in the river.
Send you swimming.
Yeah, right. Well, I went in. It was probably, I don't know, foot and a half deep. You know, it wasn't over my boots, but it was pretty close. So.
Yeah, still it's water.
Yeah.
It's probably cold.
Yeah. Oh, it was too. It was cold. It was cold. But there's me and the doe in front of the lean-to there. That's our little parking area where we're always parked at, and all the old farm equipment there by it. So it's just kind of a neat shot there. But when we got back to camp, you know, the first thing we did after I gutted it out and washed it out and cleaned it up and everything is we went ahead and skinned it. But he had the heart from his deer and the heart from my deer. And he says, "You ever had deer heart?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, I've never cooked it, but I'm going to try." And he did. Here's a plate full of deer heart. And
how did it come out?
He did a nice job on it. I have to admit, he did a real nice job on it. It was very good. Did it on the grill.
Did he cook it? Okay, he did it on the grill. He didn't cook it like David Boggs did.
No, I mean David's friend. Yeah, David White. Yeah, very similar.
Okay.
Very similar, but not quite. This was on a grill versus in a frying pan. But I tell you what, it was really, really good. So.
Really?
But after we got done with all that, well, what's the next thing you got to do? You got to start butchering deer. So that's Derek's deer hanging up there in the back end. And luckily for me, I brought some stuff to actually do some butchering with. There's a pile of bones and rib cages and spines after we got done cutting deer up. In this picture here is meat where we started taking it off the bone, deboning it. And see, that's the thing. Indiana, I had to debone everything to bring it back. You can't bring it back into the state of Michigan. All you can bring back is the meat. You know, you can't bring back bone. So that's what I had to do, and I had to be prepared for that. Make sure that we had it done that way. And there's some more deer legs. And if you look in the top of that picture, you'll see the lopping shears, my EZ Kut loppers, G3 loppers that we use to cut the legs off with. And actually break them down, break the spine off, cut the spine off at the rib cage to actually shorten them carcasses up a lot. So that helped out. But the one thing that I made sure is I brought my vacuum sealer down because I knew the process I was going to have to go through it. I was going to have to take time, debone the deer, go ahead and cut it up, prepare it, wash it, clean it, and go ahead and get it in bags. And they had a freezer there, so I just put it in the freezer, and that way I could put it in my cooler and get it home without it, ruining. So.
Yeah, and that works out good. But there again, it took you a few hours to get that process done, so you had to incorporate that in your week.
Well, I've talked about the same thing. If they ever do that to you guys in the UP with CWD, if it ever gets into your area, you're going to have to do the same thing.
Matter of fact, we talked about that on our way up. Is what if, and we're going to have to plan. If we get deer, you're going to have to plan a half a day. Because it doesn't happen in 20 minutes. No,
actually, I was showing Derek a lot. I mean, that was the thing is, I think he said it was his third deer, and he'd help other people break deer down. But I mean, we went through the whole process. He's like, I want you to show me how you do yours. I want to show me how you take and cut it all up and package it and get it ready, for table fare. I was like, well, I ain't a butcher, but I'll show you how I do it, and I'll show you how my dad taught me. And I said, and we'll go through the process. We started. We got probably 5-6 hours into this doing 2 deer. I mean, at least 5 or 6 hours a piece,
Right.
Spend the time doing this. And, but when we got done, you can imagine that back room in that garage smelled like dead deer carcass. You know what the smell smells like.
Yep.
Well,
like a butcher shop.
Yeah. I had the Oz with me and I turned the Oz on. Hung that back there and got that thing going, and it totally eliminated the smell. I hung it on the gambrel, and we just let it run for a couple hours, and it did the number. It cleaned it right up, and you could not tell that anything was taken, there in the back end of the shop there. So it worked out really nice.
That's awesome.
But I want to show a couple videos here real quick, and I know, Danny, you can't see them, but this first one, I'm sitting in a tree stand one day, and you look up here in the center of this video, there's a squirrel. And the squirrels down there are big as barn cats. They're huge, and they're everywhere. Well, this little guy, you can see him. He's knocking leaves down. He's cutting branches. He's cutting. I'm sitting in an oak tree. He's cutting. I think that was an oak I was in. Maybe it was. Maybe it was a maple. Anyway, here he comes. Starts to scurry down the tree, and he's just making all kinds of racket. And I'm like, okay, well, where are you going? This is the tree that I'm in. Oh, wait, he's coming right down at me. Is he going to jump on me or not? And I'm like, okay, which way are you going to go? He's on the back side of the tree. Oh, but no, right there he is, right in my face. He sees me and goes around the backside. So that was kind of funny. It was one of the moments I just happened to get the camera out, and it was fun that I had it there and got to take a little bit of a picture. So that was pretty cool. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the sunsets down there. At this time of year, I don't know what it is about being in that part of the Midwest, but the color of the sunsets was absolutely breathtaking. I mean, golds and orange and yellow and red. It was in this next picture here, it's a little bit blurry because I couldn't get it to focus because of the low light, but you can just see the colors popping. It was just simply incredible. But I will say the one thing that was not incredible, and I call them the spawn of Satan. This is a coffee filter full of Cuckoburrs, devil seed, and I forget what the other one was called, but these things were all over my clothes, and I had to clean them almost every single day. And this is just from one day.
Almost,
right here. It's just,
almost had to shave them off.
You couldn't shave it. You had to take your fingers, and actually my fingers in my thumbs, my index finger and thumbs on both hands there's no. It wore my fingerprint off because I can't even use my thumbprint to open my phone right now. It wore it off until they grow back. I mean, every day I was doing this, and I tell you, it's horrible, absolutely horrible. I want to see. I got another video here. I'd like to try to show if I can find it here real quick. Might take me a second. Well, while I'm talking about this here, Danny. Wait, here we go. So we talked about the buck baits, and on this particular morning, I sprayed these two trees that you see in this video here, and this little 4-point trying to be a 6. He come in. I just wanted to show he's sticking his nose right in it, licking the tree. He was interacting with this tree a lot more before I could get my phone out. But, yeah, I sprayed it on the tree there, and he was digging it. He was checking it out for sure. So that was pretty cool.
He was loving it, eh?
Yeah. So, but all in all, I learned a lot. I spent a lot of time in stand, and I had a great time. When I was hunting on the back end of the property, like I mentioned with the three, what I thought were 3 does wound up being 2 gigantic button bucks.
Yeah.
I was back there and didn't see anything up until like the last hour and a half, and all of a sudden the woods came alive. I saw 16 deer that evening. Everything was really close and tight, but I was watching that button bucks, and they got behind my tree, and I kind of moved to the side so I could see them through the V in the tree. And a doe busted me that I did not know was anywhere around. She was about 45 yards in some thick stuff, and she started stomping her feet. And then she started blowing at me. And while she was blowing at me, she started. She must have blew 15 to 20 times. And then all of a sudden, I was like, okay, she's blowing like crazy. I'm going to count them, see how long she blows. She blew 42 more times before she quit. 42 more times, and she blew at least 15 to 20 before I started counting. Yeah.
Jeez.
So I wanted to put a bullet in her head. But as soon as she left, a nice, what I would call a nice typical Michigan 8-point came in. Probably 90, 100-inch deer. And he walked with it. He walked around, made freshened a scrape up, rattled on a tree a little bit, started to walk out, got the grunt tube out, grunted him back in. He came around right behind the tree. He gave me a perfect broadside shot at 15 yards, stood there for probably 30 seconds to a minute. But it just wasn't what I was looking for. Give him a pass. And
right, exactly. You've got. This is the thing. You've got things on camera that tells you not to shoot that buck.
Yeah. So, and here's one last video I'll show before we wrap up the show. This is I was hunting in a different stand, my other stand I had set out, and it's 2 6-points. They're at 35 yards. They're just cruising through that morning, nice and early, just checking things out. And actually, the second one here, I think he winded me. The wind had changed directions on me that morning and was blowing that way, and away he went. So that's a couple of little videos that I got to shoot while I was down there. But yeah, all in all, it was a great trip. I can't complain. I had great encounter with a great buck, and it just didn't happen. Didn't materialize. And all it's going to do is make me shoot more this coming year. So,
and learn. Live and learn.
Yep. Ron Moses says, reverse masking tape around fingers. It wouldn't have worked, Ron. These were in so tight, these little ones. Regular Cuckoburrs, those weren't too bad to get out. But what I call the spawn of Satan, the devil seed, these little things about the size of a BB, and they were embedded so much you had to dig to get them out, and it was painful getting them all out by the end of the week. My fingers are still raw to the touch. So, but all no, it was a great time, and hopefully things will work out and we'll get to lease again next year, and we'll be back at it again. We're already talking about next year and what we want to do. And I've actually really thought a lot while I was sitting in the stand trying to figure out how I would access the property differently, how I would hunt differently, and where we need to put more stands. So, yeah.
There you go. You always thinking positive, right?
Well, you got to, because if you don't, you give up. And I ain't giving up. I mean, that's
right. And you learn.
Yeah, and now we get to, this starting on Friday morning, we get to reach out and touch them. So we get to make the long distance call to these bucks, so to speak. So
there you go. Exactly.
But, it was fun. I will say it was fun. And by about Friday evening, I was ready to come home.
There you go.
It was cold and it was tough to get out on Saturday morning. Saturday morning was a rough one. But I almost got a crack at a coyote. So he winded me at about 30 yards. So he was in some thick stuff, getting ready to step out into a clearing for a shot. And he hunkered down, and the wind had actually switched that morning. It was coming out of the southeast, and it turned, southwest, and it turned to the southeast, almost due east at that point. And it was blowing right across me, and he picked me off, and away he went. So, but he was beautiful. He was a beautiful coyote. Had a nice thick coat on him. So, all in all, it was good, and I think from what you're saying, you guys are going to have a good time up north, and hopefully I'll have a good time at my camp as well.
And hopefully we have both good reports next Sunday night.
Yeah, and we got to get a hold of Ken. I want to hear the whole story on his situation. So, talk with him. And
absolutely, we got to hear his story, and we'll let everybody else hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got a lot of people on that kind of started tuning in through the show that I haven't mentioned yet. I just want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. And you guys get out there. Have fun. Be safe this week, especially you guys here in Michigan. I know Indiana starts, I think, on the 16th for firearm. Michigan starts on the 15th, which is Friday, and a lot of other states are starting to pop. So everybody get out there, have a good time, but most importantly, be safe. Think critically before you pull that trigger. Make sure you have what's behind that target or behind the animal before you shoot. Don't want to hear about any incidences of people getting hurt out there. So y'all be safe. And
that's right.
Danny, you be safe, my friend, and we'll be talking here real soon.
All right.
Okay, so for everybody here on the live stream and the podcast, we're going to go ahead and sign off, and y'all take care, and we'll be back again next week.
And don't forget, you can catch us in syndication at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on goodtalkradio.com. This episode was brought to you by
PSE Archery,
Spot Shooters Archery,
EZ Kut,
Packer Max,
Hunter's Blend Coffee,
Scent-Lok,
Scent Blocker,
Limb Walker Game Calls,
Buck Baits,
Gut Check,
Stanislawski Release Aids,
Copper John,
Fourth Arrow Camera Arms,
Wind Sense Vapor Hunting Products,
and Rebel 6 Rubs.
Thanks for listening, and join us again here next week. Until then, remember, as we always like to say, if you're out on the water or in the woods, shoot straight and be safe until next week on the Up North Journal.